Oh, wow. I'm loud. And welcome. It is time once again for CU Immigration here on WRFU LP, Urbana, 104.5 FM. I will be your host for this evening. My name is Mr. Garza, and I am here to let you know that WRFU is an open forum for the Urbana-Champaign community. Yep. Views expressed are those of the speakers and are not intended to represent WRFU, UCIMC, Urbana Socialist Forum, or, as we like to say on the TV version of this show, UPTV. Whose views are these? Well, that's a very good question. You may want to know that, and in order to answer that, I will introduce, or I will actually have my two charming guests introduce themselves right now.
Yep, for me?
Sir, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, I'm Mugiko. I came from Japan. I am teacher, professor in the Konan University, Kobe. But also, I have a radio show, Harukana Show, the host of the Harukana Show from WRFU. Like that.
On Friday evenings.
Friday evening,
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Koji, third year PhD student of History Department. I'm studying in the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign.
And coincidentally, you also happen to be from Japan.
Yes,
Is that
I'm
correct?
from Japan.
Uh-huh.
Coincidentally.
Yeah. And at great expense, I flew in our guests to perform on tonight's show. They have a little jet lag from their long flight. How many hours is it? 14?
No, 15 hours.
15 hours. Oh,
Japan advanced from
yeah.
here.
Yeah. So just for the show, thank you for putting up with that to come to the show. Actually, I'm lying. They were both here already, and I talked them into coming on the show. So thank you. Arigato. Arigato gozaimasu.
Arigato.
I've already forgotten how to say Happy New Year or something. Omedetou.
Akimashite omedetou gozaimasu.
Akimashite omedetou gozaimasu.
Or Shinen omedetou gozaimasu. A Happy New Year.
Shine?
Shinen. A New Year. Shinen omedetou gozaimasu.
Oh, that's getting complicated. I don't think I can.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So yes, welcome and thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. So you're neither of you is strictly an immigrant. You're both here,
I'm a
visitor and student visiting.
Yes.
But I imagine that both of you, sorry about that, both of you have experiences here in the U.S. that are similar to someone who would be an immigrant in terms of language.
Yes.
Your English is very good.
Oh, thank you so much.
Was it good before you came here?
No, I don't think so. But I was in Seattle before coming here as a visiting kind of exchange student. And also I've been here for 3 years. And I guess I feel less and less kind of, or I feel more and more comfortable in talking with English with friends, professors. Yeah, so.
That's the thing that has always amazed me about the foreign students who come here, how you can do your entire academic career in a language that isn't your own. I mean, it's like, it's two whole steps that you have to do. One, you have to think of these, very complex thoughts, and then translate them somehow into another language.
Yeah.
So are you thinking in Japanese when you're sitting there and, reading a book or whatever?
Yeah, I think when I read kind of English books, I think in Japanese or translate English kind of passage or English sentence into Japanese and understand them in Japanese, and maybe I understand kind of retranslate it in English, or and take notes in English, and so maybe I doing some kind of translation and retranslation work in my brain, from English to Japanese and Japanese to English. For example, when I say something in kind of seminar or classroom, actually I hear somebody speak in English and translate into Japanese and think something and translate it into English and say, they're very complicated.
That seems like a lot of extra work.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to do this kind of, upper level classwork, even if it were in your own language with, everything was familiar, but that's very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, but in a kind of easy conversation, or not in a classroom, or not in academic kind of space, I can think in English, for example, say something, or say just hi, or how are you, or something. I don't have to think in Japanese. But if I want to say some kind of academic stuff, or some kind of difficult thing, I need some kind of Japanese thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually, academic speak is its own language, really.
Yeah, yeah.
In any culture. You've noticed this as well.
Yeah.
When you write academic papers, you're using a different Japanese than when you're just talking to somebody. So that's all actually a third language that you have to learn. Because I know a lot of English speakers, native-born English speakers, go to school. They have to learn academic speak. There's a certain style to write and a way of expressing yourself, and jargon, words that have a meaning in academic context that don't have that same meaning in regular speech. So that's complicated. Very complicated, I would think. I mean, it would be for me. I have enough trouble just getting through my day speaking the language I grew up speaking. That's hard enough, but to do it like that seems like very hard. So you came here to go to school.
Oh, yes.
So that's your whole purpose for being here.
Oh,
is
yes.
to go to school.
I came here to study what I want to study. So I'm an Americanist, and I'm interested in modern U.S. history.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so I came here to study U.S. history, and this university has kind of very good professors, kind of very, kind of also famous professors in the field I want to study.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I chose this university.
Huh. And how did a kid growing up in Japan become interested in American history?
It's kind of maybe not many Japanese are interested in American history, but they are interested, I guess, American culture or American food. Yeah, but in my case, I was interested in U.S. history when I saw the kind of 9/11 terrorist attacks in 2001 when I was a high school student at that time, and I'm very interested in why some people hate the U.S. At that time, I was I liked the U.S. I loved the U.S. U.S. movie, U.S. music, kind of jeans, whatever, American product. Yeah, that's why I'm interested in the U.S. And
yeah, we watched a film the other night from Estonia, and it was about how Western culture was creeping in past the Iron Curtain into Estonia and influencing the kids growing up there. And there was the same thing. It was like the Soviet powers, were saying, "Oh, this is propaganda," and people were going, "But I like it. I like blue jeans and rock and roll," and they really liked that thing. And Americans were consciously presenting this as a form of propaganda, as an way of influencing people around the world. And I know that Japan and the U.S. have a fairly long and very complicated history together for many years, since the Second World War. So there's bound to be some connection there, that you can't grow up in Japan and not have this strong sense of the U.S. Even if you're not interested in it necessarily, it's there. There are a lot of words, English words, that Japanese use, and food and cult styles and things like that. I know that there are a lot of subcultures in Japan. Maybe you aren't that familiar with this, but they rock and roll styles and punk styles and all these different things. Do they borrow any of these things from other countries, or is it all U.S. stuff? Is it all like? Do you know what I'm asking?
Yeah.
Because every time I hear about, of course, I would hear about it through the news, and so they're talking about it like, "Oh, look at this! These Japanese are copying American style here, like motorcycle gangs and all these things." But I just wonder if that's the only kind of thing that I hear about, or if they're copying, like German styles and Australian styles, or what. Do you know?
Cultural style.
Cultural styles, yeah.
Yeah, we directly influenced. But we say the Western.
Western?
The Western, it means we don't, how can I say, European also we say Westerns. American also we also say
So it's kind of
Western.
all the same.
So not strictly, we don't know, identify which is from America, which is more from Europe. All of them, we say the Western style. So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and indeed, some people doesn't like American political style, but some more people, how can I say, they don't think this is from America. This is from Europe. More natural, we accept culturally the film and the music, especially music.
So
Yeah.
not so much from, say, China or Korea or anywhere around there?
Of course.
Not as much
Recently, so for example, I'm teaching in Japan, and so the younger students, they love the K-pop,
Oh.
some K-pop. They
Okay.
say the K-pop, it's a special genre, so they say K-pop, J-pop, K-pop. So before we don't have the, probably we don't have the term K-pop.
Yeah.
And but there's some, we also influence, of course, the historically more
Yeah.
many years ago we influenced is China, but yeah, younger person now is more sympathy with the Asian culture, I think, and also the comic from Japan, also the more comic exported from other countries.
Oh, comics.
Comics,
Not like
yeah.
comedian, yeah. I have to admit, I cannot really tell the difference between K-pop and J-pop. It seems exactly the same to me. Same style, same look, same sound. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
Can
for,
you
for
tell?
you, I cannot say.
Other than the language?
But it depends on the times. Korea or China also, they're not so free for make their own music.
Yeah.
And so now they import, export their music, but 20, 30 years ago, it's not so free to create their pop culture. So, but for example, Harukana show is Friday. We give the Harukana show, that's a Japanese radio show, but we give the Korean K-pop or Western music, and but of course J-pop, Japanese music. When I gave the K-pop, not K-pop, Korean music, the 20, 30 years ago, that's music. Then some listeners say, oh, she doesn't know the Korean language, Hangul. Even though, oh, it is like the Japanese music 30 years ago, like that enka. Some music is very similar, feeling is very similar. They don't know that the language is exactly different, even though some similar. But indeed, they love the K-pop in Japanese younger person, if he or she loves K-pop, they says it's very different from Japanese J-pop because they're more sophisticated and so for fun from Japan. For the K-pop, they think it is more sophisticated dancing and the music and etc. And Japanese J-pop is especially idol, about idol. Do you know idol?
Yeah.
Idol, the Japanese J-pop idol is younger, more teenager. But the K-pop idol is more wider, after 20 or so. So there is some difference for the fun. I don't know. I just learned from Harukana show. People request the K-pop, J-pop like that. So sorry, it does not matter.
Well, no, I'm just curious. You think G-pop is going to come in? Chinese? Are they?
I don't know.
Do they even try?
Not.
I've never heard
Yeah.
of it, but I wouldn't be surprised. They do everything else. So
That's the commercialized cultures and the more underground cultures.
Mhm.
So also the different, so different level of culture are there.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
commercialized culture sometimes controlled by political directions. So also censorship also like that.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
we cannot say anybody free have a freedom. We cannot say
Mhm,
so
mhm.
under the politics always.
I see.
Anyway,
I
so
see.
please
Yeah.
today's the main guest.
Yeah, main guest. It doesn't seem to have a lot to say about K-pop or J-pop. Not very interested.
Yeah, no, I'm interested in. But,
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, but I'm not familiar with. I love J-pop, but I'm not so familiar. I'm not so familiar with K-pop and
Huh.
J-pop. Maybe. Yeah.
Like I said, I can't tell them apart really very well. I hear a lot of it on the show on Fridays, but
Yeah.
if you didn't tell me which it was, I wouldn't know the difference, which says something, because I am actually a musician, so I ought to be able to recognize if there were distinct differences in the musical style, I would recognize that. So whatever the difference is, it's something that's identifiable to the fan who has a very exacting sense of what they're looking for or expecting to hear, because from the outside, as strictly a musician, there's virtually no difference that I can hear. But I am unsophisticated in this.
Anyway, westernized
Yeah.
J-pop also K-pop.
I think they're both very westernized. I
Or
don't.
more globalized.
Yeah, globalized is probably a
Yeah.
good way of putting it. Yeah. Well, that's anyway. Let's get back to our guest here. So, American history. That's interesting. So, you started out. I like blue jeans, and
Yes.
I like America. You
Yes.
generally were fond of America. So, when you started studying its history, what kind of history did you get? Did you go immediately into like deep history, or did you just sort of like, oh, I'm curious, I'll read some, superficial?
Yeah, so I started with kind of more current issues. When I was an undergrad student, I studied international relations and also America's foreign policy after 9/11. And I realized, or my advisor at that time recommended I should read history books of US history books. And he suggested this is not the first time US kind of acted in such a way. And I started reading kind of very general textbooks from the kind of colonial period to the present. And I more specifically focusing on the kind of turn of the 19th century, for example, the 1890s or 1900, when it's very interesting to me that the U.S. once possessed kind of colony, because the U.S. was a colony, or colony of Great Britain, but
Right.
it was very contradictory to me that the U.S. possessed colony and expanded its territory into Philippines, and Hawaii was also a kingdom, but now a kind of state of the U.S.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was very 1890s and 1900 were very interesting kind of period to me. And yeah, so now I look at the other period. Yeah.
I don't know that any country is ever entirely honest about what it's doing in the world, but it has always struck me, from what I know about U.S. history, that it's uniquely duplicitous in the sense of it says this, it's doing that, and even however obvious it is that it's doing that, it still says it's doing this. And how often it gets away with that in the sense that American citizens believe, oh yes, we're doing this, and other people around the world go, well, I guess that's what they're doing. It's just really interesting to me how boldly, I guess you might say, U.S. has lied its way through world affairs. Even in World War II, I mean, that was ostensibly like, even a lot of people who are more or less familiar with American history will call that a good war,
Yes.
in the sense that, like, that was altruistic. It was not, selfish or whatever, but it was entirely, well, not entirely, but it was largely based around upending the old world order and creating a new one with U.S. on top. It was at least consciously performed in that way, to that end. So it's like it's hard for me to even look at that war and go, oh well, at least that was a good war, or a just war, or whatever you want to call it. And every other one has been naked aggression in one way or another. So I don't know. I mean, do you feel like sort of like you're was it hard to accept this as you were going along, or did it seem kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense? As you were learning it.
I think, US is a very interesting country. I mean, because it has very, how can I say, kind of exceptionalist ideology. I mean, for example, the kind of the ideology of manifest destiny in 1840s, and US used the ideology to justify its expansionism into the western part of the US, and but such kind of, so it's such ideology can justify what the US is doing. And also when the US started the Iraq War, the President Bush said, okay, we will bring democracy and freedom to Iraq, and actually invaded Iraq. But the kind of same logic was used in the 1840s and the 2003. And it doesn't change anything.
I know.
They
don't change it. They just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And it's amazing.
But I'm also interested in how the American people actually learn history. I mean, what kind of history do they learn in, for example, in high school and middle school or elementary school? Is it more like kind of nationalistic, patriotic history? Or how they, some of my friends said they didn't learn a kind of critical US history in high school, and they learn, for example, the US US was empire or US was an imperial country. They learn such thing after entering college or in grad school. And I'm very interested in how history is taught in high school or in kind of public education.
I'm not sure how they do it now. I mean, I was obviously a long time ago when I did that. In my day, it was very simplistic, and it was, so basically the way they do this, which is, once again serves a dual function. In order to teach really young people things, they have to simplify it. Obviously, they can't get all as complicated as the reality was. So in the process of simplification, they just managed to leave out all the bad things or all the negative parts, and only talk about it in it's fairly, I won't say it's dishonest. It is a description of what happened, and they describe why it happened by using quotes from people who are talking about what they intend to do. So once again, it's not dishonest. These are actual quotes, but they are quotes from propaganda rather than, do you see what I'm saying? So it's not like you read the history and go, okay, this is a lie. It's not a lie. It just leaves out everything that you need to understand in order to get the real sense behind it. And then when you combine that, the propaganda is in the media, is in popular entertainment media. So I grew up, I'd watch, say, like cowboy movies. You were talking about Manifest Destiny. So I saw cowboys and Indians. I knew that Indians were, good Indians were nice. They stayed on the reservation. Bad Indians would attack people and do terrible things. So cowboys were always having to defend against bad Indians who were just crazy. You just didn't know what they were going to do, and they were very evil and cruel. So you learn that from watching cowboy movies and reading books, and then you study the history of the expansion, of westward expansion, and you hear about manifest destiny. They're not shy about saying it, but they don't say what it means. They say, this is what people were thinking at the time. And you go, okay, well, they were thinking West. It's just really fascinating. I think someone could do amazing work studying how they propagandize young people indirectly, just subtly, all along the way. So you end up with this sense of the American myth as being, you have some truth and some myth. You understand it as a myth. You understand it as truth. And there's not enough of a contradiction, given what you're taught, for you to ever stop and question it, unless you really seriously want to know more. So that's one reason I think that foreign students coming in learn it more honestly, maybe, because you don't have this myth part. You've heard of it, but that's just something you heard of. It's not something that you were given every day of your life in one way or another, through comic books, through movies, through TV shows. That's how the myth is perpetuated and perpetrated, I guess you could say. And then the textbooks and the actual the other, the technical data is basically true. There's nothing that you can really point to and say, okay, that's completely wrong, So they work together, but they work together in a very devious way. I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep talking, but it's interesting to me to think about how this happens, how Americans can grow up, become adults, and know history in a general way and still not really have any idea what actually happened. It's really interesting, and so I can see why, coming in from the outside, it would be like, oh, well, it's kind of obvious what happened. How can you still believe, when you hear, oh, we're going to go liberate this country? You've never liberated anybody, but it's because you don't have all that baggage that we have, just sort of being around here and seeing flags flying and parades and that sort of thing. I don't know. Maybe it's similar in Japan. Does Japan teach its history in a kind of a convoluted way like that?
I think recently we have a very kind of controversial problem about how we teach history, especially, or how we memorize the World War II and our history of kind of Japanese imperialism in Korea, Manchuria, and Taiwan. And now we are kind of changing the course, or the Ministry of Education is changing the course into more kind of patriotic, more nationalistic way, kind of escaping from kind of admitting, okay, we did wrong thing, but more like we are not so wrong or something like that. Yeah, I think. Yeah.